Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Sasi Prasad, a technical architect in Marketing Cloud. Today we'll be discussing WS Proxy, and this is my blog. I would urge everyone to basically visit my blog and read my documentation on WS Proxy. You can type WS Proxy here, and then you'll get this blog, WS Proxy via SSJS for SOAP API. Let's go to the official website of Salesforce Marketing Cloud with respect to the objects in Marketing Cloud, right? Automation as an object. So we have an automation object, right? And we'll be trying to run WS Proxy programs here, okay? And try to see what we all can accomplish using WS Proxy. This documentation also says that in automation objects, you can only filter automations using in and equals simple operator. Not all other operators are supported. Even the complex filter is not supported, right? And you can also go to the properties, or what properties do you have inside the automation object. So let's directly dive into the SSJS code, and let's start this session. So first code, the first program that I've written here is to basically describe an automation. Okay. So describe an automation means what all things we basically get inside an automation. If you want to visit the WS Proxy website, so you can write WS Proxy in Marketing Cloud, and then here you get all this documentation. So today we're first starting with the describe. Last time we did with the data extension object. Today we'll be doing with the automation object, right? So here we have a very simple code, and here what we are doing, especially from line number 13, we are basically calling a function. This is a user-defined function, and inside this user-defined function, we have basically created a new object called API. The object type script.util.wsproxy. So we're creating an object of WS Proxy type, and then we are calling a function called describe, passing the object name. So you can basically type any object, whatever we have here inside this. These are all the objects. You can try one by one, long list of objects, and you can run this program. The only line that you need to change is this line number 4, passing right object name. It would work, right? So what I'm going to do is I want to run this code and see what the result is coming. So I'm not going to Marketing Cloud instance. Rather, what I'm going to do, because once we publish the code resource, they're publicly accessible, right? So I have already added those code, published it, and I have created this project called automation. Inside this automation, I have added the URL here, okay, the endpoint, and now I'm going to run this code. So you can see here, this is the automation, the object type. It is the type automation. And what are the properties? The properties is like name. To look at this attribute properties, inside these properties, we have the properties name as object ID, data type as string, value XSD string, property type is also string. Most important thing will be this one, is retrievable property or not? It says yes. Is queryable or not? It says false. You can't query by object ID. So you also have a filterable attribute, and so on. We can go to another property. The another property is name, and the same fields or the attributes are here. And then you have another property called description. So let's go back to here. This automation, all getting all this description. Where's the name? These are alphabetically sorted. So all those are coming here. So you have this schedule.id, and likewise, I think you have more than 30, 40. I'm not sure. It's around 37 properties. So this way you can basically check what are the properties for an automation. Fine. I'm not going into much of a detail. We have discussed this in much detail when we did data extension. Now let's go to the. So here, if you see, we are not only fetching the properties detail, but we are also fetching whatever is inside the. This more of a metadata for the object, right? So everything is here captured. What is the minimum length? What is the maximum length? And so on and so forth. Now, I'm just added a very simple. This is the same code. Not much here. You can ignore the other things. So here, if you see here, what we did was describe the SOAP object, right? Here I have said describe the SOAP object, and after that, I'm getting a described response. And on the described response, what we had this results, right? Results in an array, and inside the array we have the properties. So inside the results, we are parsing this particular response and basically getting only the properties node from that particular JSON object. And what I'm doing here is I'm adding a for loop, and inside this for loop, I want to see how many properties do we have for this automation object, and I'm just printing the properties.i.name. Right? You can write properties.i. Other things as well, is retrievable or is filterable and whatever, right? I'm basically focusing on what are the names, properties name that we have inside automation object, right? So let's go back to my SOAP object. So this is the property name, and here, okay. So below are the properties name for the automation object automation. Let's see what's written here. Below are the properties name for the automation object or object automation. Okay, so it also says object automation. Fine. So here, object ID, name, description, schedule, .id, customer key, client ID is active, created. Similarly, I think is 37. So basically, it starts with 0. So we have more than 38 properties name or properties inside an automation object. Let's move forward. Then few things here. They're the same. Okay. First, this line we are saying what is the name of the SOAP object. Okay, you can make it data extension. You can make it any other object. It's up to you. And then we're describing that particular object. We are calling a describe function, which is written in here. Describe, right? Yeah. Okay. So this is the describe function called describe SOAP API SOAP object. Fine. And then we on a previous example, we basically passed this particular response and was extracting the properties for that particular object. Fine. And when we did the describe, we saw there are fields with, let's go back. If you see here in these properties, okay, we have inside these properties, there are at properties type, which is called isRetrievable, right? So these are the retrievable fields, which will, when you do the retrieve, okay, it will assign a value to this particular property. If there are certain fields which are not retrievable, then it will basically either give you 0 or null when you do the retrieve. Fine. So I want to find out of that 38 properties, how many fields are there which are retrievable. So I created another function called fetch retrievable properties. This one. Okay. Here what I did, I passed the soap metadata, that is basically the properties. This is properties. Here I created an array. I have shown the same functions when we did for data extension. And then I'm looping this particular metadata into a for loop, and I'm extracting the name and isRetrievable attribute, and whatever isRetrievable attribute is equals to true, I'm pushing into that array. Fine. And then I'm capturing that into this particular variable called calls, basically columns. Okay. And then I'm basically writing this line saying the below are the retrievable properties for an automation object. I'm doing a for loop and printing those values. Fine. So let's go here, retrievable properties. Okay. And then hit it. So out of this, if you see this, we had around 38 because it starts with 0. Okay. We have 38 properties. Out of these 38 properties, only 12 are retrievable. So whenever we do the retrieve function, only these values like object ID, name, description, customer key, and all these fields will be have values. Okay, others might be there, but those values will be either null or 0. Fine. So let's move ahead. This is a automation. Okay, automation object where I'm adding here. Till now, I think this is clear, right? This line basically describes the object, fetches, and all the metadata for that object. This one basically parses that particular response and extracts the properties for the describe object. And then we are fetching the retrievable properties. What we also want to do is we want to filter that object. Okay. Applying a filter saying that status equals to 2. So when we see status equals to 2, what it means, you can come to this automation, go down. So here, these are the code for the status. We have -1 to -8. There are few more, which is not mentioned here. Okay. So from -1 to -8, we have different status type. So we are looking at the ready. Okay. So we are looking at the ready automations. How many automations there are in the ready state. And then I'm doing a retrieve operation on that particular object, right? And all these functions, actually, I'm not going into details because we have already discussed in the data extension WS Proxy program. You can go to my YouTube channel and see it. So here, what I'm doing is, how many automations are there in the ready status? I'm applying the filter and retrieving all those automations. And here I'm printing the length of the results, saying that these are the number of automations which are in the ready status. And then I'm printing the customer key for that automation. You can basically type it as customer.name, and you'll get all the name of the automations which are currently in the ready status. Or here you can either use in. We'll show in another example how we can apply in and then fetch other things. So here we are looking only at the automations which are in ready status. So we go to ready, okay, and then fetch it. So here it says there are 56 automations in ready status. So inside my business unit, we have 56 automations which are in ready status, and these are all the basically the customer key or the external key for that automation. Fine. Let's move forward. Now, the same function, okay, Only the apply filter condition is what I'm doing here. I'm checking with the status similar to the previous one. Let me just comment this code 4 and 5. So we are looking for all those automations which are in the status 4 and 5. What does 4 and 5 means? 4 is paused and 5 is stopped. So we are looking for those automations which are either in paused or stop status, right? And I'm doing a retrieve on that particular SOAP object. Okay, these calls are retrievable properties, and the filter that we are applying here is basically the status filter. And then we are looking at how many automations we are there in this particular status, and then also printing the customer key. Let's go to the start or stopped or paused and see. So there are 23 automations in stopped or paused status. Okay, and these are the external keys. You can basically here you can change it to name or any other things which is retrievable, and then you can print those values. If you add a property which is not retrievable, it will always come as null or 0, right? Now you want to search an automation by the name. So this one is the same. So you see all functions would remain as it is. Only the filter apply filter function would change. So here I'm filtering with the name property. Okay, equals holiday calculation. So I have an automation named holiday calculation. Let's change this. Okay, and let's see. Let's go to Postman. So we have this holiday calculations. Okay, and let's retrieve this. So right. So the status is okay. I'm also getting the status ID. And if you want to confirm the name, you can see the name. The name is holiday calculations. And other things, because whatever is not retrievable, it will be like null, okay, or it will be like 0, like this. This will be this. So only those retrievable properties, those values will be populating here. That's what I was saying. We can search by the name. What next? Okay, so this one is more interesting here. So the next SSJS code, basically, same thing. Here, till here is the same. So we are basically what we are doing is we are describing the object, extracting the properties, fetching the retrieval properties, and assigning it to the calls variable, column variable. We're applying a filter with the name saying holiday calculations, and we are doing the retrieve for that particular automation with the name holidays calculation. And after that, this retrieve, what I'm doing is I'm doing a perform item on the SOAP object. So I have added one more function called perform SOAP object in the object name and a payload. Here, one thing you need to keep in mind is after this, you have this proxy, WS proxy object created, and then you need to set the client ID. Either you pass it the ID or the user ID. I have added both ID and user ID here. And here, from this payload, basically, if you go back, I'm going slow. So we did a retrieve, and from the retrieve, we got the response. And if you see, go back to this Postman. So these were the results. This is the full response, and these were the results. From the results, this in the array, I'm going and fetching the customer key for that particular, this customer key, okay, for that particular object. There's a SOAP automation object, right? So here I'm getting the response. I'm passing that response as a payload. Here is the payload. From the payload, I extracting the results, and from the results, I'm extracting the customer key, and I'm applying the filter saying that customer key colon customer key as a key value pair as a payload as a filter condition. Fine. I have an action that is start or stop, so I can perform both the activity. Either I can start the automation or stop the automation. Here I'm saying the action one is basically start. This is just an optional. We'll discuss some other day. So I'm doing a performItem on this particular WS Proxy object. So let's go here. What we're doing, we are running the automation, right? Okay, so I got the status saying okay, and request ID. I am also getting the request ID, and this is the task. So everything is fine. The status code is okay. So I ran the automation by WS Proxy. Now we have the last code, which is basically to delete an automation. The same function till here. Okay, describe the object, extract the properties, extract the retrieval properties, apply the filter by name. I gave a name saying demo1. Fine. So there is an automation called demo1, and then I did a retrieve to validate whether that particular automation exists or not. If it exists, obviously I'll get a proper response. And I created on a function called delete item soap API object. So if you go at the last here, okay, so I have a delete item soap API object. I'm passing the object name and the payload, similar to what we did for run. So this is the WS Proxy object creation, set client ID. Okay. Here I'm extracting the customer key, doing a filter, and what I'm doing is delete item and adding a filter with the customer key, right? And returning the results, and then I'm printing the result here. If you see here, right? I'm here printing the result. I'm getting the result and printing it, right? Which automation I'm basically deleting? I'm deleting an automation called demo1, right? So this is the delete automation. I send this. Okay, so the status is okay. If you go down, okay, so it says the status code is okay, and the status message is program deleted. Particular automation got deleted. Fine. So today what we did, we first started with a describe function, okay, and then extracted all the properties for that particular object and printed those values to see what are the properties we have for that particular object. And then we parse those properties to fetch the retrievable properties and printed those retrievable properties, right? And then what we did, we basically filtered the automation object, okay, to find out what are the ready automations we have currently in our business instance. Then what we did, we tried to find out what are the automations which are basically either in stop or pause status. We printed all those customer key for those automations. And then we applied the filter based on name and search for that automation called holiday calculations. Okay, and we retrieve that particular object. Fine. And then once we retrieve that particular object, you see here the holiday calculations, they retrieve, and we perform an item saying that either start that automation or you can stop the automation. So here we applied a start of action and we started that automation. And finally, what we did, we searched for an automation with the name as demo1. We tried to retrieve to see whether that particular automation exists or not. Okay, and then we deleted that particular automation. We could have applied more filters here, okay, not only searching by the name. We can't apply the complex filter, but obviously we could have done something else. Once I think more than one retrieve would be required. Okay, so we'll try to do some kind of a demo, try to see how we can basically apply complex filter into the automation. Like first fetching all those automations which are either in stop status or in some other statuses, and then create a list of customer key or some other values, and then again doing a retrieve and then applying a batch delete. We'll go in some other sessions. Fine. So thank you for listening. If you like the video, give a like and share your feedbacks. We'll meet again in some other video. Thank you all. Bye.